Hello, welcome to the top 10 games of 2023, video games that is, and my video games, my top 10 video games of the year. I hope everyone had a great year of gaming. I think we had a pretty good year. I mean, there were a fair amount of bad games, but I think the majority was up in that upper, pretty good to really good / excellent. And of course, not all games can make it onto a top 10 list, and there were quite a few that I had to cut this year, whether they just weren't as good as other games that I was playing, or I didn't have as much fun with those games, even though I might have rated them higher. There's a lot of factors that go into lists like this. Just to start off, though, I'd like to give a shout out to a couple games that missed the list this year that I did genuinely enjoy and generally like, but they just didn't get higher onto lists for various reasons. That's Star Wars Jedi Survivor, Wolong Fallen Dynasty, also Resident Evil 4 Remake, Bomb Rush Cyberpunk, Goodbye Volcano High, Cocoon. There was just other games this year that I enjoyed more, I played more, and I felt the need to go back and replay them. So that is the honorable mentions. Hopefully you don't get too angry at me for missing some of those games from my list. But thank you so much for tuning in. If you're here with the live reaction on the Twitch channel, hello, and hope you enjoy the top 10 video games of 2023. Let's go. Okay, thank you, me, for introducing the video. Let's go ahead and jump right into my top 10 favorite games of 2023 with number 10. Dead Island 2, a long time coming, but it finally came out, and I gotta say, I am so happy to have gotten to experience this game. Now, I know a lot of people. I know what you're saying. Oh, yeah, I mean that's an average game. Maybe it's even below average. And I'm like, maybe it is, but I had a ton of fun with it this past year, really. And I cannot think of a better game to put at number 10 for my personal top 10 list than Dead Island 2. Not only was it graphically phenomenal, but also the combat was very enjoyable. And the story was taken straight from the era of, 2014. But that being said, the environments that you go to, the places you fight through, the zombie hordes through, the gore system, the overabundance of stupid quips, the amount of stupid weapons you can either buy or make yourself, the variety of the zombies walking around. I mean, I know that there are some areas where several zombies will look the same, but each area kind of has their own vibe, has their own designs for zombies. There's multiple different ones appearing all over the place. I felt like the gunplay was actually pretty satisfying when I wanted to use guns. I felt like these special zombie types, even though they are picked straight out of Dead Island, the old Dead Island games, and Dying Light, I felt like they fit pretty well in this apocalyptic world. They didn't seem just put in there because they had to check mark a box for zombie games like the original Dead Dying Light or Dying Light 2 for that matter. I felt like it was a solid time. It wasn't high art. It was, fuck me. It was just fun. I just really enjoyed myself while playing it. I was smiling all the way through, except for the final boss fight, because it was kind of like a letdown. But that being said, Dead Island 2 is, I think, the perfect number 10 slot for this year's list. And I usually do reserve the 10th slot or the lowest slot on the list for the game that's maybe not going to turn any heads. Maybe in a couple years we're going to forget about it. But the time that we had with it, it's like a guilty pleasure type game. You know it's kind of dirty to play, and you know it's kind of dirty to put it on a top 10 list. But goddamn, I just really enjoyed myself. I found the combat to be very fun. I felt like graphically it holds. It's not going to age too bad at all. I think it's going to age pretty well as we go into the next part part of the generation here for the PS5 and the Xbox Series X and whatever Nintendo has planned for their next console. I think the gore system is a standout highlight of this game. Never have I seen gore this detailed and this visceral. I mean, come on, like I know, like I said before, I know it's not high art, but goddamn, I just really love playing through it. And of course, I played through it with a friend too, Greedy Waffles, and we just had a fun time playing it together. At the time of recording this, we do still need to play some of that DLC, and I am excited to try that out. But as of right now, the baseline Dead Island 2 gameplay and the game as a whole package, I should say, was great. I really did enjoy it, and I think that you will too if if you just want to play something that's stupid and fun, and it has like some quirky quests in there along with some of the more straightforward fetch quests. And if you want to play something that feels old school but it just came out this year, Dead Island 2 is definitely the game for you. I feel like, once again, I just feel like it's a really just good, fun, dumb game, and that's why it's sitting at number 10 on my top 10 list this year. All right, we got the dumb game out of the way. Let's move on to number 9. Coming in at number 9 is Dredge, an indie game that came out earlier in the year that I thought, if no other games came out this year, this would probably be the game of the year for me. But alas, there were 8 other games that I found more enjoyable and or better, in my opinion. But that being said, Dredge is a very interesting game. It's not wholly unique per se with the fishing mechanics and stuff like that, but I think the presentation and the gameplay itself is very unique and something special. You play as a guy who shipwrecks in this island area, and of course he's got to work to pay off the loan that he got for his boat, to repair his boat. And there's some weird Lovecraftian supernatural stuff going on in these arpeggio type islands. And eventually, as you go through the story, it gets weirder and weirder, and the areas get more and more difficult to fish in. And I love like the Pokemon style of like 150 something, maybe even 151 fish that you can find, and some of them only come out at night, and other ones only come out when you are doing this certain thing, or some of them you can only catch with a net being dragged behind your boat, or some of them can only be caught in the little crab catching devices. There's just so much going on in this game. It's sometimes you can say, yep, it's a very chill game. And other times you can say, yep, it's a very intense game. There's an entire part of this game where there's like a giant, like monstrous fish, no matter if it's morning or night, day or night, following you around and trying to sink your ship. It's very an intense area to go through, and but like the best fish are like in the middle where the guy like hangs out and swims around. So there's a lot of like risk and reward. There's a lot of puzzles and hidden secrets to find. And I just mostly liked getting the fish, and of course there's like supernatural abilities you can eventually get, like making your little tugboat, your little fishing boat go faster, completely catching every single fish in an area with a press of a button, which is pretty OP. Being able to repel enemies, whether they be the like giant piranha-esque fish, like those ones that you would like the one enemy type from Banjo-Kazooie that was like this fish with giant fangs on it. It's one of those games that I'm definitely going to remember for a while, and it's definitely going to be in my mind if more games like Dredge come out, because in the end, I think that Dredge is going to open the door for a lot of games emulating the style of being like a little fishing boat, and you're just dredging the oceans, trying to fish all the weird fish and all the nice fish and sell them and make your fortune, upgrade your little fishing boat to have the best equipment and go from there. And I think that it's a testament to Dredge to already have its first DLC out, which is a completely different take, not a different take completely, but it's got that ice world and there's so much many different things to explore in there. And then it also already has collaborations with other companies as well. I mean, Among Us is one. Dave the Diver, it's shown up in there. I wouldn't be surprised if Don't Starve or even Cult of the Lamb decides to get on the Dredge train, because the Dredge train don't stop. And by train, I mean fishing boat. But yeah, Dredge was a very, very fun time. I really enjoyed it. I do wish that like the day and night cycles were maybe a little bit longer. I always felt like the day cycle just didn't last long enough, and the night cycle felt like forever sometimes. And I guess it's kind of how you would kind of perceive it if you were on the high seas. Like, oh, the daylight just burned out so quickly, and the nighttime it just seems to be lasting forever. But it does start to kind of become a Blair Witch scenario where it's like, is this night ever going to end? Like, will it ever be morning again? And eventually it is. And if you go to sleep, of course, you automatically make it morning. But if you go to sleep, you're gonna miss all the best fish. But you're also gonna miss all the Lovecraftian horror in there, like monsters coming out of nowhere to attack you, very fun like wisps of light and effects whipping around your boat. Yeah, just a very cool game, a very fun game, a really enjoyable game. Dredge, if it's not on your top 10 list, then you probably didn't play it, honestly. Just a very good time. I really enjoyed it, and I think you would too if you want to try it out. I know it sound I know how it sounds. Oh, you're a fishing and you're fishing day and night cycle. Whoop-de-doo. It's a lot more than that. Another small issue I had with the game that didn't elevate it to higher than on the rest of this list. I felt the ending. There's two endings, and they're both a bit weak in my opinion. I was expecting maybe something a little bit more grandiose, or maybe maybe not so much like a boss fight, but kind of like how like the third area you go to has like a monster in a lagoon, like a sarlacc pit that reaches up and attacks you. Maybe it's something similar where you gotta do something special to draw it out and then hit it with something, or fish in that location and fish like its heart out or something like that. I don't know, something to kind of really spice up the ending rather than the kind of more bleak and just opaque endings that the game does have. But that being said, it's a very good game, very enjoyable. Definitely one that I would recommend if you're an indie game enjoyer, or if you just like the vibe. Check out Dredge. You're probably not going to be disappointed. I don't want to say 100% because there are some weird people out there, but I think most people are going to enjoy their time with this game. What's number 8? Number 8 is Humanity. No, not as a whole collective, but as a video game. Humanity is a puzzle game. It's a lemmings game. If you don't know what lemmings are, they're like these little rodents that just follow each other, and they would follow each other off of a cliff if they wanted to. And so humanity, the human beings, are now lemmings, and they just kind of follow in big, massive groups, and they follow your commands. And you are a little cute little doggy who is kind of modeled after Shiba Inu, but it's just a bright white, like glowing character. It's actually, I mean, this game actually does have a very interesting background story happening while you go through these different levels. There's obviously some really cool and nice commentary in there. There's some really fun additions you can unlock while you go through the game as well, like turning your characters into different types of lemmings. I believe one of them changes each character into like a different shape. So like there's squares, triangles, circles, and stuff like that running around instead of humans. There's plenty more like visual changes as well. Like you can make them all look kind of cartoony, and it's a very fun and laid back game that also makes you think, like really makes you think sometimes. And it also had a very fun trophy list to it. I did do the platinum trophy for Humanity as well as Dead Island 2. I didn't feel like saying it because it's like, yeah, it's not really factoring into my enjoyment for the game. But Humanity's trophy list actually made me play the game a little bit different at times to try and do different objectives. And of course, if you don't know the gameplay of Humanity, you're essentially just placing down markers that tell the people which way to turn, the jump, to go, do various different things, right? And it doesn't matter if you lose some along the way in most cases, because they're kind of like an infinite loop of humans coming out of these like glowing doors that can. They can push, they can jump, they can swim, they can do all the different things. And you, as the dog, needs to give them orders and tell them where to go. There are these goldies, these gold guys, who are special. You don't have to get them, but if you do get them, they net you those fun rewards I was talking about. And there's usually 2 in each level to get, and usually they're in spots that are they make you think a little bit more as you go through it. I definitely fell in love with Humanity, whether it was in the VR mode with the PSVR 2 or just handheld, not handheld per se, but holding the controller in your hand and controlling it. It was a very, very fun time. I loved the music. Oh my gosh, the music was like this chill kind of like lo-fi almost at times, kind of intense at times too, kind of upbeat at times. It was just a really, really interesting soundtrack. And to put it all together, like there's a lot of different gameplay mechanics in there. I mean, yeah, there's turning and swimming and pushing objects and jumping over objects, but there's also like various upgrades you can get throughout your time going through it. Eventually, you happen upon levels that have you battling an opposing force. With first you start off with stun batons, then guns, and then turrets, and then anything else that I am forgetting right now. And it's just one of those games that you kind of got to play it to understand, and play enough of it to get the full general vibe of it, because it does start off pretty basic. Hey, put an arrow here, put an arrow there, boom, you're done, right? But it does eventually get to a point where you are zigzagging hordes of people through obstacles and around environments that are just so fun. And the other thing that this game has that not a lot of puzzle games have is a complete, in your control, designer for levels. You can literally design your own levels in the game, and plenty of people have done that. Some of them range from like really interesting takes on it to just really basic stuff like, hey, I did this just to check it out kind of thing, which is kind of what I did for the most part. I did play a fair amount of other people's levels, but I didn't play any that were like so amazing that it's like, oh, I gotta check out some more of these, because the people who made the game kind of knew what they were doing with the concept, and they were able to really build on what this game starts off with. And when and even though a lot of people do a great job with their levels, it's almost like the Mario Maker conundrum, where it's like, all right, these levels are good, and some of them are like really good, but you can't beat some of the classics. And Humanity definitely has a lot of great classic levels in there. Lots of fun, thoughtful ideas for the puzzles. And hey, it was a great game. I really enjoyed my time with it. So if you want to check it out, Humanity. I think it's going to kind of go under the rug this year, but it was a very cute and very fun game. Really enjoyable. Lots of nice visual flair. Lots of great music, and lots of interesting puzzles to boot. Will it be the last puzzle game on this list? I don't know. I guess we'll have to wait and see. But while we wait and see, let's turn it over to number 7. Number 7 is Marvel's Spider-Man 2, which is a fair bit lower than I think most people were expecting the game to be. Maybe not. If you've listened to the podcast episodes, maybe you would have known that I was not super into this Spider-Man game. Now, I know there's a lot of people who liked it more than the original Spider-Man game from Insomniac, and I will say there are some things about Spider-Man 2 that I do like better than Spider-Man 1, but there's also some things from Spider-Man 1 that I don't like as much as I'm sorry, that I like more than Spider-Man 2. But that's not to say that the game is worse or bad. I think they're kind of on equal footing in a lot of different ways. Like Spider-Man 2 has better side content than Spider-Man 1, because Spider-Man 1 is a lot of like go to this place and beat up a bunch of bad guys and move on. Spider-Man 2 did have a lot more variety in its side missions, had some more heartfelt side missions in there as well to really hammer in the point like, hey, this is Spider-Man. He's a hero of the people. Which is always really nice to see, because that is kind of how I think most people view Spider-Man, as like the local, like, hey, I go to the bodega and I buy shawarma every so often kind of superhero, right? And I did find the combat to be pretty good in Spider-Man 2. I thought the parry mechanic, it grew on me, obviously. I didn't start off loving it, but it did grow on me a bit as I went forward. So it's one of those things. It's like it's kind of like a love-hate relationship with that kind of thing. The other thing that I didn't like super like was the fact that they took out so many of those classic gadgets from the first game. Like, I understand they didn't want to make it so easy like the first one, where you can just whip out the impact web and just KO like 5 enemies in 1 second, or the web bomb, which can also KO like 10 enemies in 1 second. Like, I understand that they needed to kind of limit that back and make you want to use your special abilities more. But I do really enjoy that gadget wheel still. I think that they could have done some more stuff with that than just being the 4 kind of basic spider gadgets that I didn't really end up using much of in the end. Because obviously the special abilities are the big thing for this game, along with its bombastic story. But yeah, the special abilities, they're different for both Peter and Miles, which is another thing I forgot to mention before going deep into this. But yeah, you play as 2 Spider-Men, Miles and Peter. And they both kind of have their own side plots kind of going on, along with a main plot, which is mostly focused on Peter, of course. But yeah, essentially Peter, he's trying to keep a job, and he's trying to mentor Miles, and it seems like Peter's wanting to get out of the Spider-Man business to kind of start a life with MJ and whatever, and of course things keep getting in the way. Harry shows up, and he's like, hey, I'm all better now, and I have this cool suit, and Miles is like, I guess I'm not needed as much in Peter's life anymore, but he has his own stuff going on, like hunting down Mr. Negative, who has escaped from prison because Craven has come to New York to try and, I don't know, get a satisfying hunt in before he dies. And of course, the Venom suit attaches to Peter eventually down the road, and you get the Venom abilities and whatnot. Obviously I have a couple issues with this game, seeing as it's so low on the list here. I mean, it's not low, but it's pretty low compared to, I think, most people's lists. And one of my main issues was just kind of how, I loved a lot of moments from the story, don't get me wrong, but the big hard-hitting moments, which come usually after or before a boss fight, were just kind of lacking when the boss fight happened. Like, you hunt down the lizard with Peter, and you do this whole like really bombastic and cool part where you're chasing him down and whatever, and then the boss fight is just like punch him to pieces and leave. And compared to Spider-Man 1's boss fights, which were much more dynamic and had a lot more cinematic quality to them, the fights with like Venom, Scream, the Lizard, all these boss fights that had like multiple health bars and stuff like that just kind of fell flat in my opinion. They weren't like, they start you off with such a high with that kind of semi-scripted boss fight with Sandman, but he's like this giant beast. He's doing all his things. You're doing these really fun moves and having some really fun moments. And the rest of the boss fights just don't really live up to that one, in my opinion. They're either too long, too drawn out, or they do have, or they are a bit fun like the lizard fight, but they just don't have, they don't change up as you go through them. Like they have 3 health bars, but each health bar they add like only one move between 3 health bars. They add some new moves in there. It's kind of annoying. I would say the other boss fight that was actually pretty good was the Craven versus Spider-Man. Or maybe it was Craven versus Venom. Either one. Yeah, well, either one of those. So yeah, that was one thing that one area this game kind of let me down in. I also felt like the game was a little bit unstable throughout the entire experience. Not so much so like Jedi Survivor. But I did have a couple crashes in there, and I did have a couple glitches in there that I just don't want to see in my AAA first-party PlayStation game, and I love Insomniac. I think they do a great job, but it could have been maybe left in the oven for a little bit longer to cook and really, really get some of those issues out that were kind of plaguing the game in a general sense. I also want to say that even though this game does have more side content, like more varied side content, a lot of the missions left me wanting more because they were either cliffhangers for DLC or maybe even the next game, or they just kind of ended in ways that were like, okay, all right, whatever. I felt like the game had too many of those moments where it's like, okay, and now we've established this guy, the Chameleon, or Carnage. And then they don't do anything with it because it's like, and wait for the DLC for this guy, or wait for the next game for this guy. It's just kind of like, I just put a bow on some of these a little bit. Put a bow on some of them. I don't need to have the whole like obligatory ending for every single side mission. Obviously there were some side missions that were genuinely fun. I really had a good time finding the spider bots all over the city and having that like Into the Spider-Verse kind of Easter egg was really fun. Really enjoyed that. There was another one for taking pictures of New York, which was once again kind of harkens back to the notion that Spider-Man is just a guy in New York City. He's kind of like the everyday man of New York City who is just gifted with an amazing ability of the spider. And taking these pictures of like not really candid, but just like new people in New York doing things was pretty cool. I did enjoy that a lot. There were some pretty fun ones in there. Pretty basic though, but pretty fun. But it does say a lot that I'm like struggling to remember all the different side missions. It has been a couple months since I last played the game. I did the 100% and said, okay, that's good enough for me. It was a fun game, but it just left me wanting more. And I guess that is a good thing, seeing as like, okay, I want more of this. I want more Spider-Man. But it's also in a bad way where it's like I kind of wanted more from the boss fights. I wanted more from the side missions. I wanted more from the gadgets. And all those things weighing on top of it kind of pushed it down in my eyes on this list. That's not to say that's a bad game. That's not to say that's a terrible game. I still stand by my 4.5 out of 5. I think that it is, in general, a really good experience. Has a pretty nice story all the way through. There's some things that just need to be touched up on, in my opinion, and there's some things that needed to be fleshed out a little bit more, and some things that maybe could have been cut from the game entirely. But that being said, it does deserve its spot at number 7 on my list. And let's see if number 6 lives up as well. Coming in number 6 is Pizza Tower. Pizza Tower is one of my first 5 out of 5s this year. I believe it actually was the first 5 out of 5 this year. It's just such a wacky and crazy game. Boosted into popularity through various YouTubers and places, just giving it the highlight that it deserves. I think that Pizza Tower is a really well done 2D platformer. Harkens back to the days of like a WarioWare or something like that, but also adding its own twist and spin on so many different things. You play as the titular pizza man Peppino, and you're just trying to work your way up the corporate ladder. And that ladder is actually a tower full of monsters and paintings to jump into to grab ingredients and go. So yeah, each level is pretty much just getting as high of a score as you can before having to book it to the exit. So essentially, you go through the level one direction, and you're collecting the little food guys and finding little secrets and doing little secret areas to get more points. And you're defeating enemies, and you're using your parry move to parry them. That gives you points as well. And then eventually, you knock out like this big doofus, and a timer starts, and now you need to race back, either back through the level or through a different way to get back to the original entrance of the level, and it's now the exit, which is just a really fun and quirky concept. I know they kind of did that in WarioWare Shake It, I believe, but it's just like it's so. I know that WarioWare Shake It is also pretty crazy with the visuals sometimes, but like Pizza Time is really just above and beyond. It has like this really crazy, almost anxiety-inducing art style that kind of looks like the guy made the entire game in Paint, almost, if you know what that is, Microsoft Paint. And it just adds to like the wackiness and craziness of the entire game. Each level past like the first few missions really has its own vibe, has its own gimmick to it. You go from riding like a sausage horse throughout an entire level to doing this level that has a bunch of portals, and there's a bunch of there's another level down the road that you like are in like a flying saucer or whatever, and there's one level where it's mostly just like racing another character, and there's one level where you're on a mouse, and you're it's so hard to like really pin down and describe this game. But I guess the real bottom line is that Pizza Tower, it's chaotic, it's crazy, it's kooky, it's weird, and it's really, really fun. It's just a really fun time. It's a really good time. I think that in the end, Pizza Tower will be looked back on quite fondly, and I think that a lot of people will go like, and I think a lot of people will be like, oh, I think that the game really should have won Indie Game of the Year, or I do think that game should have won, over Super Mario Bros. Wonder. And maybe people will say that in the end, but as of right now, I'm the one saying it, and I think that Pizza Tower is better than Mario Bros. Wonder, even though Mario Bros. Wonder is very good. Pizza Tower just takes the cake in all the right ways. Just the wacky, craziness of it all, and the boss fights. I didn't even mention the boss fights. Like, they're actually really well done. I mean, there's one boss fight where you're essentially like you grab a gun and you're doing like an old west shootout with the guy. There's another one that is very crazy. It's like a mirror. Man, I don't want to explain it because I want you to go and play the game. It's very cool. It's very fun. Check it out, Pizza Tower. It's the only 2D platform you need this year. Okay, but it's nice to have more. It's nice to have options, obviously. But yeah, Pizza Tower is just the most fun 2D platformer this year. Has great music. It has a great visual style. It's just very chaotic, very crazy, and it's definitely worth playing through if you want to. And hopefully they bring it to other platforms in the near future. I know there's a lot of people who don't have like a don't game on their PC or whatever, so they want it to come to Switch, they want it to come to PlayStation or Xbox. I'm sure, hopefully, this coming year they will do that. But as of right now, it is only available on Steam, I think, and that's where I played it, and I had a lot of fun with that. And it's not gonna. You could probably run this thing on a freaking potato computer. Like, you don't need the most advanced tech to play this game. That being said, I really don't have any negatives to say about it, other than there was just a couple more games that I just had a more enjoyable time with. And let's get to the next one right now with number 5. Armored Core 6: Fires of Rubicon was a game that I never thought that I was going to beat this year, but I ended up doing it. One of the last 2 weeks before this video was coming out, I ended up just really sinking my teeth into it and saying, I'm going to beat this game because I think it's fantastic, and I know that if I beat this game, it's going to be on the top 10 list. And I only put games that I beat on my top 10 lists, okay? I haven't put one that I haven't beaten in a very long time at this point. So Armored Core 6, I made it a mission to finish it up. I only had a chapter or two to go before the end. but it was a very brutal experience towards the end. The final boss that I fought for my first playthrough was Ire, and that boss took me a better part of like 3 to 4 hours to finally beat. But it was just so satisfying to finally get the win, even though it was frustrating. Don't get me wrong, it was frustrating. It was very satisfying to get the win at the end there. There was another boss that I was struggling with as well towards the end of like chapter 3, I think it was. And once I finally beat that one, like then that really opened my eyes and I went, okay, we're doing this, because that boss I was stuck on for when I took a break. I came back and I was still stuck on it, and I took another break, and then I finally picked the game up on like the January 1st or something like that, maybe even like New Year's Eve. And once I got past that boss, I knew that I was going to finish this game, because I would have been very disappointed with myself if I did not finish Armored Core 6 this year, because it is a very, very good mech fighting game. They don't make them like this anymore, folks. That's what the old timers would say. I haven't played a Armored Core game since Verdict Day, of course. I think that's the last one that came out. And I was very hungry for this game when it was first announced, and I was very surprised to see that it was coming out as soon as it was after the initial reveal trailer, with From Software doing so much in the Souls category. You knew that there was going to be some of those mechanics in here, which there definitely are, but for the most part, it is a very detailed mech designing and battling kind of game. Once you kind of get your build going, it is easy to kind of slip into that, like, oh, I can just use this build for the rest of my playthrough, right? Wrong! You are so, so wrong. If you're a person who's stuck in their ways and only using the one play style, the one mech archetype, you are playing this game wrong. Each and every level doesn't really require you, but it's very, very helpful to change up your build to either be more fast or more tanky or have harder hitting weapons or lighter weapons, or, et cetera, et cetera. I found myself changing my build around so often. I was just having a blast, just, maybe trying a level and failing and being like, okay, what can I change about my mech, and doing a few little touch-ups here and there and coming back in and then beating it on the next one. And I felt that a lot when I was doing the boss fights, especially those ones that are like the entire level is just the boss fight. I found myself really picking apart my mech build and being like, okay, what can I do to my build to make me a little bit faster on the dodging, or maybe a little bit more hard hitting, or maybe allow myself to get their exhaust meter up faster than the other enemies that I was facing, because the exhaustion is a real key part to beating this boss. And it's just one of those games that I really, really sunk my teeth into and was like, yes, I am understanding this. My build is ever changing, but that's a good thing. That's a good thing. You want to change your build. You want to try new things to get past these bosses, because I've listened to a fair amount of people talk about Armored Core 6 before I beat it, of course. And a lot of them were like, oh, I really struggled through this fight. It took me a really long time and blah, 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 but I eventually persevered and blah, blah, blah. And you see their footage, and they're just using the same configuration for their 200 plus runs, right? When I was stuck on the final boss fight of my playthrough, I was like maybe every other death, I was like, what worked here? What didn't work here? What can I do for the next one? And that is all I was doing. I was trying some really wacky fucking shit by the end of it, putting the fucking worm killer weapon on my shoulder and seeing if that was going to do any better, using flamethrowers, trying grenade launchers, trying pulse weapons and laser weapons and all these. Like, I was trying all these different things, and I feel like some people are just too stubborn and stuck in their ways. Like, it's the same thing as like Elden Ring or Dark Souls, where it's like once you start your build in those games, yeah, it's a good idea to build off of that build and keep going forward with that build. But in Armored Core, if you have a build that is your vibe, you're still going to have to change things around from time to time to counteract the things that the game does in order to trap people like that who are not changing their style to fit the needs of the level. So if you are struggling with the game, just try and customize your mech, And even though, maybe it does sound a bit daunting, I was stuck on a boss fight for 3 or so hours, at least I'm man enough to admit it, but I'm also smart enough to admit that I also was changing my build almost every single bout, and eventually I found something that finally clicked, and I was able to get it to go in the end. And yeah, I just think in general it's a great game. Maybe it doesn't have enough variety in the locations you go to, but there are some really stellar visuals throughout the game. There's this one boss that has like 1,000 rocket launchers on itself, and it's a very goofy design, like this dome design, but it's also a very like cool, satisfying visual when he fires, and like the area around you, it's like this starry night and stuff like that. It's just a very cool vibe, and there's a lot of boss fights like that where it's in like a location that's really cool, even though you've just been through like mechanical zone number 15 for the 7th time. When you get to that boss fight, it's usually in a pretty cool place with really stellar music. And I think that Armored Core 6 really is From Software either giving us a really nice send off for the series, or maybe because the sales are going to be so good, deciding to continue making it after taking a risk. I guess we'll have to wait and see where they go with that. But I was very, very pleased with this game as an Armored Core fan. I've only been playing since like the 5th game, so, I'm not like a super, super heavy duty fan, but as a fan of the series, from what I've played, I was very satisfied with this. I was very happy with this. It combined the elements that you kind of know from the Souls games that From Software does, while mixing in those mech game, styles, the Armored Core styles that you also know and love. And I think that Armored Core fans are going to be are going to be pleased, and people who play this game like a Souls game are probably also going to be pretty pleased as well. I think that in general, it's a great time, and yeah, I know that like they get the full experience. You got to play through the game a couple more times. Callus has been very adamant to try and get me to play through the game again. At this point, I am a little burnt out. After spending so much time on that final boss, I really could not will myself to play any more of the game after the credits rolled. Like I played a couple levels and I was like, okay, I'm like burnt out right now. So maybe in the future I will get back to it and play through the game another couple times to get the different endings. But as of right now, I'm leaving it here with the Ire fight. And it was very cool. It was very fun. I enjoyed my time with it. I had to take a little break here and there, but for the most part, it was smooth sailing. I enjoyed it. I loved the mech customization. I love the different mechs that you meet. There's some really goofy characters in there. And I also, in general, enjoyed the story and just how everything kind of progressed as the game went along. So yeah, if you haven't tried Armored Core 6, and you like From Software, or you like mech games, or you like a challenge, pick this up and try it out. I don't think you'll be dissatisfied. Let's see what number 4 is. Dead Space Remake. This is probably the highest that I will ever rank a remake on a top 10 list. Now, I could eat my words. I definitely could eat my words, but I feel like Dead Space is the almost perfect remake of a classic game. The original Dead Space is a 5 out of 5 already. So Dead Space Remake is really like a 5.1 or a 5.5 out of 5. Like they really went above and beyond for this game. I really, really, really enjoyed my time with it. And of course, a lot of that does come from maybe not nostalgia, but just from playing the original game and knowing that the original bones, the original skeleton of Dead Space Remake is already so good. Like, sure, there's a couple things that I would change in the original game, and they did that for Dead Space Remake. It's wild that they improved upon the game. Holy crap. I mean, I know that a lot of people are going to put Resident Evil 4 Remake on their top 10 list this year, or maybe even their number 1 spot. I understand, but Resident Evil 4 Remake did not do as much as Dead Space Remake did for me personally. I loved how they changed up the map, the layout of the ship. You can pretty much go from area to area with a little tram system, and eventually you can just kind of walk the entire length of the ship, which you could not do in the other game, in the original game. They changed up some of the boss fights to make them more enjoyable. I know that I think that some people actually did like the boss fight with the fucking laser cannon. I'm gonna tell you right now, that was shit. Okay, for a 5 out of 5 game, that's probably the one thing that I would say take that out, and it's actually like a perfect 5 out of 5, rather than just like a low 5 out of 5. Um, but yeah, I will say that the changes that they made to Dead Space really, really worked in its favor, and it definitely wrote like made this game rise above its predecessor, while still leaving that original game there to be played and you can have a good time with the original game still. But the true like great original Dead Space experience is this Dead Space remake. It is just something. It is something of a maybe not so much a miracle, but it is something that I did not quite expect to happen. Especially because I mean it's EA and they're doing a remake of a game. Like you expect there to be like something to go wrong, but nothing went wrong. I felt like this game was just a perfect remake. They did everything right. I swear to you, they did everything right with this game. The visuals, the changes to the story, the changes to the boss fights, the changes to the layout of the maps and areas you go to. The combat feels so good. The sound effects and the audio design is just so crunchy and so ominous as that background noise and the scraping of the necromorphs that are a little bit out of reach. And oh my gosh, it's one of those games that I will definitely be revisiting over and over and over again. I'm already knee deep in a replay of the campaign to try and get the new secret ending, which is really exciting. So we will see how I feel about that eventually down the road. I'm in the middle of trying to find all the different little things you need to touch, the little relics you need to touch, but yeah, if you have not played Dead Space Remake and you love the original game, or you like the original game, or you just want a game that's really fucking good and a really great game to play during like the October month, Dead Space Remake is gonna be your game. And really, Dead Space Remake is now the base for where I will judge remakes, not remasters, but remakes in general from here on out. If something is not up to this level, yeah, you're going to hear about it from me. Like I said, I know Resident Evil 4 is really good, and I know that Resident Evil 4 Remake was really good, but I will say this, okay? I think Dead Space Remake did it better, did a remake better, and I'll leave it at that, okay? But definitely check out this game. It's great. I also forgot to mention they gave Isaac a voice in this game. He didn't have a voice in the original game, and that adds so much to this game. It really, really, really does. So please make sure you check out Dead Space Remake. It's probably the best thing that EA has put out in quite some time. Yeah, a great time, a really great time, and I can't wait to see what they do with the rest of the series, if they do eventually do the entire trilogy again, or if they change it up. I do want to see what they have in store. Well, once again, it's like a really gross kind of game. It's got the whole mechanic with shooting limbs off of the enemies and stuff to kill them, and that was also still very satisfying, just as satisfying as it was back in the day. And then stomping on the corpse to get some extra ammo or whatnot. Very, very cool. From one gross game to another, let's see what number 3 has in store for us. Yes, that's right. Lies of P coming in at number 3. I didn't just do that for the rhyming scheme, okay? Lies of P is a Souls game. It's inspired by any number of Souls games from the past, like Bloodborne and Sekiro and blah, blah, blah. Okay, I get it. Lies of P. It's really good. I really, really enjoyed my time playing through this game. I think this is the first time that a Souls game has really cracked the top 5 since Bloodborne. Even though I really enjoyed Dark Souls 3 and Elden Ring and whatnot, I think that Lies of P takes what those games offer and it builds on top of them so seamlessly. Not only is there a dodge system akin to something like Bloodborne, but there's also a parry system, a deflect system. There's multiple gadgets that you can use for your arm, and there's just so much going on with the combat. I just really, really had a great time just messing up as many freaking puppets as I could. And the piece de resistance in this game is those boss fights. The most incredible music, the most incredible visuals, the most bizarre sometimes creations that this game has to offer. It all just piles on top of each other in such a grandiose way, such a beautiful way, all culminating in the end of the game where you fight, well, I don't want to give it away, but you fight something pretty dubious at the end of it all. And I will say a lot of Souls games lack in the facing forward story department. Sekiro tried to do it and did a fairly good job with that, and so did Wo Long and stuff like that. But there's not many Souls games that you can point to and go, yeah, the story is like really good. It's really straightforward. It's right in front of you, there for the taking. And Lies of P does that, not just through lore and through cutscenes, but also through the basic gameplay. Like, the gameplay has not only a story to tell, but the overarching story to tell. Like, you pick up phones to talk to like a riddle master. You find characters in the open world like the fox and her brother who need your help, or maybe they maybe they don't need your help. They're just using you. I don't know. Choose for see for yourself. There's so many interesting characters to meet in there. There's so many interesting monster designs in general, from the puppets to the big puppets to the bosses to the zombie type creatures to the globs of green goop that are supposedly used to be humans. Like, it's one of those games that it does have like a Bloodborne style in a way that's like, okay, the monster design is really on point. But it definitely takes it in a totally different direction for the most part. And I just really found myself being engrossed and enamored with the different areas that you go to, the different enemies that you meet, and the different like bosses that you fight. It all just works so well together. And my one main gripe is those last two areas that you go through. They are not designed as tightly as the rest of the entire game. But I will say that the boss fights in those areas are still very good. Okay? The boss fights are still very good in those areas. It's just the layout of the levels just was not grabbing me. I didn't like the enemy placements, and I didn't like the overall design of the areas. If you played the game, you might know what I'm talking about, but there's this one area that's kind of designed like a vertical maze almost, which I did not vibe with. There was also like this whole like D-Day inspired beach scene where you're like attacking this like fortress on a beach, and there's like just 1,000 enemies, like big and small enemies to fight. I was not like I think I like the gimmick of that, but it's like yeah, it's just kind of weird. And then the final area was just full of like the most BS enemies that they could possibly throw at you. Like, until that point, like, the enemies were challenging and they definitely kept you on your toes, but they decided to give them such high damage and such wild, weird animations and different configurations that it started to become a bit annoying as you got to that final stretch before the grand finale. But the grand finale was worth it. It was definitely worth it. And then the secret boss at the end was also very interesting, very cool. Now, I was a dummy, and I chose the bad ending, and I felt really bad. But I did go back and watch a video of the actual ending, like, that I could have possibly gotten if I chose the other ending. And I did enjoy that a lot more. And yeah, like I said, like, it's a very forward-facing story. If you like story in your games and you want more from a Souls game, because not a lot of them do this, this is definitely one to try out. And with it being free, quote-unquote, on Xbox Game Pass, it really opened the door to a lot of people to at least try it out. And I think if you aren't vibing with it by the time you get to the actual first boss, you're probably not going to have a fun time with it for the rest of it. But it is a bit of a learning curve. You definitely got to really learn the combat between the different hit styles, the exhaustion meter that requires you to do a heavy attack in order to actually get them down on one knee, the different attachments for your arm, the different like you can parry and block, and if you block, you still get chip damage, but if you attack the enemy, you get your damage back. And the same thing also works for the enemies. If the enemy hits you, they get their health back if they still have some of that like faded beige kind of red background to their health bar. It's so many things on top of each other, but it all works so well. And on top of all of that, the music is amazing. The songs you can find in the world and play on the jukebox are so well done. And let's not forget the amazing, incredible graphics in this game. Graphics aren't everything, but they definitely enhance the experience when done well. And this game definitely takes the cake on the graphical style. It just is so phenomenal. It's just so good, and they definitely should be proud of themselves for this game. I think that it took some tried and true formulas from the Souls genre and mixed them together, and then threw their own spin on it. And I think they did just such a great job. It's definitely my favorite Souls game for the year. Definitely check out Lies of P. There were plenty of good Souls games that came out this past year, but Lies of P rose above all the rest, and for that, it's number 3 on my top 10 list this year. Let's go ahead and move on to something a little bit different for number 2. Number 2 is the Talos Principle 2. This was a late bloomer in the year, coming out in November, but it was definitely worth the wait. One of the reasons why I like to hold off doing my top 10 list until January comes around is because there's still some late blooming games that are good. Unlike the Game Awards, I factor in the entire year of games when I do a top 10 list. And the Talos Principle, even though it didn't come out in December, I played it in December, and I found it very, 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 very good. The first game was also a very good puzzle game. And what they did is they took that idea of the Talos Principle 1 and just kind of expanded on it tenfold. Not only did they add in a bunch of new puzzles and secret puzzles and plenty of other secrets to find as well, but they improved the graphics somehow, even though the first game still looks great for its time. They improved the graphics by like a shit ton. They also added in like a very, very good story and actual characters to interact with. A lot of what the first game did was either in cutscenes or from like the little lore terminals that you can kind of click and clack with your when you're at them. And I even though I like that kind of storytelling to an extent, I think that the more forward-facing, once again I use that term again, story of the Talos Principle 2 elevates it to new levels. The voice acting is great, the animations on the characters are great, and I just really, really enjoyed the visual flair, the visual style of this game. Like, there's some areas that you go to that are just so beautiful. Like, oh my gosh, like you can literally feel the water between your toes as you're walking down some of these creeks. But I digress. The story in the game is very good. You are the thousandth robot built, essentially, android built. The first game follows the journey of the original android, and now you are following in the footsteps of that original android to see where it went, and what it was doing, because the kind of goal that she set was to do 1,000, to make 1,000 androids. And you kind of have to grapple with the idea of, like, do we expand more? Do we keep it at 1,000? Do we break off? What do we do here? What can we do next with this civilization to not put too much of a strain on the resources of Earth, but also, have enough, expand enough to really make a culture here. And the basics of a culture are already here. You have the transportation workers, you have the reporters, you have the politicians, you have all these different factions kind of already are here and kind of creating their own little cliques here and there. But it just kind of goes like this game, even though it's not called it, is about humanity first and foremost. It's about the human condition. It's about what makes you human. And a lot of this game does involve, obviously puzzles, but it also involves a lot of like talking back and forth with characters and discussing philosophical things. And I think if you're a person who likes good dialogue, this game does not waste your time with its dialogue. There's some games that came out this past year that I felt like when I went into a conversation with like a side character or something like that, Final Fantasy 16, and I started talking to them, it just kind of felt like it was just going on and on and on. There was really nothing being said. Whereas this game, when you talk to a character, it is a full blown conversation. It's a very good conversation most of the time, and yeah, it just was one of those games that you can really engross yourself and you can really get involved with. And on top of all of that good narrative direction, great graphics, there is just a slew of really good puzzles to solve in this game. Like, I've not played a game that has had such good puzzles. Well, I've played a couple of good games this year with puzzles, but I mean, this good of puzzles, not since the original Talos Principle. Like, the original Talos Principle really had made you think, and Talos Principle 2 also really makes you think. There are actually some levels that I had to pull up a video and kind of push myself in the right direction. They were so complicated, but I was like, it's so like when you finally get that, brain blast moment, it really clicks and it really just works. And I can see myself going and doing all the secret puzzles as well. I did as many as I could for my initial playthrough, and I did all the ones that were available to you without doing anything super secret. But I was told later on in a YouTube comment that there was even more that you could do, even more puzzles. So I definitely have to get back into it sooner rather than later to check those out. But I mean, just from me playing the game normally and doing all the missions, all the puzzles that were right there for me and putting it this high on the list, you know that it's just a banger of a game. Like, I really have no negatives towards this game at all. Like, once I got the settings for my PC right, and once I got really into it, just everything clicked and everything worked so well in this game. I really just enjoyed my time 100%. Some great music sprinkled throughout there, some nice puzzles, some just really fun dialogue options and conversations, and all in all, a really satisfying ending with some really great visuals at the end of it all. So if you haven't played it yet, the Talos Principle 2 is number 2 on my top 10 list this year. It is a very good puzzle game, and I would definitely recommend it to pretty much anyone. It's just a very fun game that really, really makes you think. More than humanity, obviously. It definitely makes you think about more than just puzzles. It makes you think about some life stuff as well, if you so desire. All right, let's move on to number 1. And the game of the year is Pikmin 4, baby. Oh my gosh, I cannot tell you how much I adore this game. I just I just really fell in love with this game when it came out. I played it for about 2 or 3 months straight. And I even, like, for the first time ever, brought my Switch to work with me to kind of play when I had some downtime at work, which is something that I never do. I would never do because it's just too much of a distraction. But I was so addicted to Pikmin for 3 months this year. I had to bring my Switch to work with me. I was playing the game so much, and eventually down the road, I did the game 100%. Which, yeah, I can say about a few games this year, but there weren't any achievements that I was going for. There was just the in-game 100% completion requirements, and I said that's enough for me. I'm enjoying this game so much. I don't even need the allure of trophies or achievements to get me to finish this game 100%. And it was not like super hard, but it also wasn't easy either. There's a little bit of grinding you had to do for the purple boys, but that being said, it is just such a fantastic game. I mean, look, I don't normally I would say that there aren't many years where Nintendo games are this high on the list, because I enjoy Nintendo games a lot, don't get me wrong. And besides from like Kirby or Mario Odyssey, I don't think I've ever put them this high on the list in quite some time, at least. And Pikmin 4 just took me by surprise. I mean, I bought it just out of curiosity because I had never played a Pikmin game before. And immediately when I played this game, yeah, it took a minute to get into it because there was a tutorial that was a little bit elongated for no reason. Once I got into it, though, I was hooked, and I immediately ordered the Pikmin 1 and 2 bundle, and I also got a copy of Pikmin 3 Deluxe, which I'm going to go through eventually down the road. Like, this was actually the perfect time for Pikmin to release. And I know a lot of people are putting like other Nintendo games on their top, like Tears of the Kingdom, but let me tell you something, bub. I didn't enjoy Breath of the Wild, so I'm not going to pick up Tears of the Kingdom. And even if I did, I don't think it would be on the top 10 list this year because I don't know, I'm just not like that into it. But Pikmin 4 was like my brand of game. It was just a cutesy game. You got these little Pikmin dudes, you're collecting things, you're battling monsters, you're going through these larger than life environments to find various objects to fuel your spaceship, and you're collecting the different characters who are lost out there because you're the rescue corps in this one. And I just had such a really, really good time with it. And one of the other things that really elevates this game is the dungeons. Like, there's so many dungeons that you can go through, and they just have so much going on. The final dungeon was like a boss rush, which was like 50 levels, and it was just so intense by the end of it. I was like, oh my god, this is so awesome! Like, this is so cool, fighting all these different characters in a row. And there's actually a fair amount of boss fights in this game that are very well done, actually, and they're like, there's so many levels that are so well designed. And man, I mean, I was smiling my whole way through this game. Like, nothing was gonna stop me from finishing it and just having it the time of my life. The only small gripe I had with the game was the load times, which is more of a Switch thing than anything. Just hardware limitations. It really started to show its long loading times when you did dungeons because you go through the different areas pretty quickly, all things considered, and then you gotta wait a minute for the game to load or whatever. And that's just a minor thing that I mean I guess it did make me take off a half a point in the end, but it's one of those things that's like, it's just not really like, I'm judging this game on the fun factor for this top 10 list, and all these games I had fun with, but this was the most fun that I had with a video game this year. So much so that, I mean, look, I'm not going to say I stole it, but I got one of those GameStop posters for the game, and it's been in my background for at least 3 or 4 months now. I mean, I raved and screamed when Pikmin won Best Strategy Game, both at the Game Awards and the Ferret Awards. Check out last episode of the podcast. I mean, if you didn't see this one coming, you don't know Jack, I guess you could say. But yeah, I mean, yeah, look, it was a very difficult year this year to make a top 10 list. And the first thing that I put on my top 10 list, my tentative top 10 list, at number 1 was Pikmin 4. It was the first game that I thought of when I said, what's my game of the year? Pikmin 4 was put right up there next to whatever other games I was playing at the time that I thought were going to be there. But it's one of those games that it was on the top of the top 10 list very early on. Probably, well, I guess not very early on, because I do start my top 10 list rank, like my thoughts from the get-go. But from the time that I played it until I really started to crack down on my top 10 list, it was always at that number 1 spot. And the reason for that is because it's just a chill, fun game, management game. It has the Dandori modes where you just kind of try and get more stuff than than your opponent, which is amazing. There's other modes like the dungeons and stuff like that to wander around and beat like harder enemies. Even in the main areas, the main hub areas, there's so much to do. There's so many characters to find and so many characters to save, and there's so much stuff fun stuff to find and collect. And there's like a Game Boy SP is one of the first things that you freaking you collect in the game. It's like, wow, that's really tugging at a lot of people's heartstrings, including my own. I remember playing Advanced Wars underneath my bed on a on a late night, playing on the Game Boy SP. But Yeah, I mean Pikmin, like it's crazy how I went from 0 to 100 with Pikmin games. Yes, I did play the original game on the GameCube when I was like 10, 11 years old or whatever, right? But I didn't understand what I was doing, which made me sell the game pretty quickly, which I do regret down the road, obviously. But now that I've played a Pikmin game in my prime of gaming, my adult mind, I can say definitively that I've been missing out, and I can't wait to check out the rest of the Pikmin games, for better or worse, obviously. But Pikmin 4 is better. It is better, and it is great, and I love it. And I love Ochi, the little dog that you have that you can ride around and ram into people, and you can give him so many different commands to go and do things. Like they just did so much in this game right. It's hard to see anything wrong. And for that reason and many others that I maybe have not listed here, but I have listed in conversations about it. That's why Pikmin 4 is my number one game of the year this year. There was really no contest. Like I was I was debating kind of between Talos Principle and Pikmin, but in the end I was like, I really enjoyed Pikmin 4 10 times more than Talos Principle. And that's saying a lot. And at that point I was like, yeah, it's just Pikmin 4 all the way. Pikmin 4 all the way to the end. And I would happily play the game 100% again. In a year or so. Maybe not right away, but in about a year or so. And I just adore this game. I love it so much. I think it's just so freaking fun. They did such a great job with it. And if this is one of the last games that comes out on the Switch, next to the slate that they have for 2024, then damn was it a good run. Like, oh damn was it a good run. And with the good sales that this game is getting, I mean, I can foresee another Pikmin game coming in maybe a couple years, maybe 3 or so years. Maybe we get another Pikmin game. Maybe we get a spin-off game. Maybe they add like a dungeon map editor in Pikmin 4 as like free DLC in the coming year. Who knows? Either way, it's whatever they do with Pikmin, I'm going to be right there for it from here on out. And you got a new fan, and yeah, that's why Pikmin 4 is my game of the year. I love it so much. I don't know what else to say at this point because I'm kind of just at a loss for words. I just love this game so dearly. It's just such a great game. Such a great game. Love it so much. Pikmin 4! Like, come on, Pikmin 4, dude. Like, come on. So how did you do this year? Did you guess my game of the year? Did you get anywhere close to my top 10 list? Let me know, and we'll be, of course, counting the winners and going through their lists and seeing who did the best. And whoever did the best, congratulations, you win. So yeah, I hope you all had a great year of gaming. I know this year of gaming was great for a number of reasons. It was also a bit sad with all the different layoffs and developers closing. But hopefully we can have some better times in this coming year of 2024. I'm already starting. I'm like from pretty much the first game of the year that I'm getting, which is going to be Prince of Persia. I'm already starting the ideas for what's going to be on my next top 10, and you should too if you're a part of that contest. And it seems like this coming year is not going to slow down any at all. I mean, we're getting so many games in the first couple of months. It's kind of crazy, and yeah, it seems like the rush of games between October and December this in 2023 is going to be nothing compared to the amount of games that we're going to get in 2024. So here's to another year of gaming, and here's the Pikmin 4, baby. I love that game so much. Thank you for listening. I hope you have a great rest of your week, a great year, and I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.